All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Who's Right podcast. And a bunch of things happened in the last couple of days, and we're kind of I don't know about excited is the right word, but we're ready to talk about it. But before we get going, subscribe to the channel, like this video, let us know how you're feeling. Victor's still having some technical difficulties, but Victor, how you doing?
I am upset. I can't lie to y'all. I've been upset for the past week. Going into the week, I was very optimistic. Y'all heard me last week, but I'm disappointed. I'm honestly disappointed. Um, you'll get all of my emotions today. I'm not gonna hold back at all. I, you can ask Franklin. I've been calling for David Stearns to be fired all week, and so you're just gonna have to talk me off a ledge today.
Well, I don't think I have to do the talking. I think Juan did the talking for you. But let's get into it. We're gonna talk about it briefly because everybody's probably at this point tired of talking about the winter meetings and the Pete Alonso and Edwin leaving. But we'll give it a couple minutes just because we haven't been here since the winter meetings. And Pete Alonso, we all had, well, not we all. I had a feeling that he was leaving, no matter what. I know some people wanted him back. I thought I started to think that maybe the Nemo trade, sorry, was going to open the door for a multi-year deal, more than 3 years for Alonso, but ultimately that wasn't a plan. And I'm gonna let Victor talk about it a little bit more because I got more to talk about it a little bit later, but we'll talk about that later. But Victor, how you feeling about Pete?
Listen, you all know I've been a Pete supporter since the very beginning. He's been my guy, even when you guys wanted to throw him down the alley and get rid of him and run him out of town. I was advocating for Pete Alonso to stay. And some of you guys might be happy. Some of you guys might be looking at that deal and saying, that is not worth it. I'm not signing Pete Alonso for a 5 year deal. I don't think he's worth that much money. But listen, when the market was set by Kyle Schwarber, who got 5 years for 150, who doesn't play defense at all, you might be able to play him out in the corner, but who knows? And is not as much of a hitter as Pete Alonso, at least not a consistent hitter, and doesn't play every day like Pete Alonso does. How are you not going to say that he's not worth that much money? And I get the sentiment that he's not worth it because we don't know what he's going to look like in a few years. And also heard it said that if he gives us 2 or 3 years, then that contract pays itself off. And so it's ridiculous that we didn't even give him an offer. It's ridiculous that we don't value him the way that you know the rest of the Mets fans value him. And I mean, guys like myself, I know that there are guys running him out of town. I know that. But man, when we have a generational, not even generational, but a guy that grew up in the system, like Pete Alonso, um, and I know we have to take the emotion out of it, but in this case, I don't think that's valid. I think there's emotion attached to this player, and we can't take that away. And but they did. At the end of the day, they did. They took the emotion away from it. They they pulled it right. They pulled the band-aid right off, and um, now we're in the David Stearns era. So all I've got to say, David, is that if we don't win a championship in the next 3 to 5 years, then what are you doing? I have no idea what you're doing.
Well, at the end of the day, we go off that narrative of the 5 year world championship thing, but if I know that not Stearns, Cohen said that he wants to win. But at the end of the day, if we really want to compare it to the Dodgers, um, Friedman got there in 2014. He didn't win until he got the quote unquote Mickey Mouse championship of 2020. And if you subscribe to not counting that championship, he didn't get one until last year. So, at the end of the day, all this stuff takes time. And if we really want to compare ourselves to the Dodgers, that's what it's going to take. And you said something poignant, is that um, we as fans have emotion towards Pete Alonso. Not me. I know you did, but you know, Stearns' job is to take the emotion out of it. Stearns' job is not to be emotional about these things. It's supposed to be calculated. So I'm actually glad that he's not taking the emotion into it, because I personally subscribe to the fact that Pete's not worth that 5 year contract. That's a way too much for a one dimensional player, which Pete is, and so I'm
That's
okay with it. But it's okay. That's why everybody has a different opinion. Obviously, the Orioles have a different opinion, and you have a different opinion, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, I wish Pete all the best, because this is not a situation where he left us. We decided not to pursue him. And I kind of just wish that it would happen last year instead of this year. But, you know, it's just the way the things broke last year. Now we got to move on to Edwin Diaz. Edwin Diaz went and is chasing the ring. He's doing the Kevin Durant. And so some people are going to hate him, some people are not. He had better offers out there from other clubs, but ultimately he decided to chase the ring, do Kevin Durant style, and more power to him. This one, personally, I'm a hate because not only are you chasing the ring, and I'm okay with you chasing the ring. Go chase the ring. But you don't have to talk or make all these excuses about why you left the Mets. Chase the ring. That's all you got to do. And that's all you got to say, that you're chasing the ring. Just say you want to win. You don't have to make all these excuses that your brother talked to you, or that Hefner got fired. Just be a man and just say you're chasing the ring. But how do you feel?
Well, first of all, I think it's ridiculous that you're just going to lightly say that Pete is a one-dimensional player and then move on. But I'll let you have it. He's gone now, so there's nothing more that we can talk about. I'm going to miss him. I hope that we get him back in a future trade or something like that if the Orioles fall off. But Edwin has to say all those things, and I think he did say that he wants to win. He wants to. That was one of the main points that he said is why he joined the Dodgers, because he's wants to win his ring in his lifetime. That's what he said at the beginning of the offseason too. And so don't blame him for that. I do think that Jeremy Jeremy Hefner being let go was a snowball effect that nobody saw coming, except me. I mean, I can't say I saw all of these repercussions happening, but that was the one firing that I did not agree with, and we're seeing it come back to bite us. The threefold now, with him, with Edwin Diaz leaving, with Antoine Richardson going over to um, Atlanta, and him as well, Jeremy Hefner going down to Atlanta. And so I think that we're seeing all the ripple effects of Jeremy Hefner being fired here, because I do think that was a bad firing. Who knows what happened? We're going to talk a lot more about what's going on in this clubhouse, how we can make it right, what these moves really mean in the grand scheme of things, clubhouse wise, because I've heard a lot that Stearns is rebuilding the clubhouse, not rebuilding the talent on the team. And that could very well be true. Maybe our clubhouse is just that bad. And I just wonder where the blame is pointed, because you know we can sit here and say Lindor, we can sit here and say Soto, but obviously there's an underlying issue there. And Edwin didn't want to be a part of it. Um, he has a sure thing where the clubhouse is established in LA, where they obviously have something going right for him. And until we have our stuff together, then I can't say that we're a winning organization. We've only made the playoffs twice in the past, uh, in the Steve Cohen era, and so him saying that he wants to win is valid. And going over to LA to do that is valid, and so I can't blame him for that because we haven't proven that we're a winning organization yet.
And that's the key right there is that everybody's upset that we traded away Nemo, let go, didn't pursue Pete, didn't pursue Edwin fully, and you just said it. We've been to the playoffs twice, and one of those times, um, in 2022, we looked terrible in the playoffs against the Padres. And so, the fact that everybody's upset that these guys are leaving when nobody has won here, and we're not okay, guys. Before everybody goes up in arms, I'm not saying that these guys are bad players. I'm just saying it's not working here. That's all I'm saying is that these guys, as right now, as a collective here with the New York Mets, 2025 and prior was not working. This team underachieved most of the years and overachieved last year. That made us believe that this core had an opportunity, but they overachieved. They went on this magical run in 2024 and they just went on this run. That's all it was. It was if you go back to the archives, Victor and I were sitting here um, talking about trading all these players in the 2024 trade deadline early until it hit June, and then they went on this magical run, and we had this magical season. But we were saying in 2024, get rid of everybody because we stunk. Everybody wants to remember the magical run, but before the magical run, we had we we had a mess. So us letting go of this core is shouldn't be a thing that I understand we have emotions. This is a loss. It's 162 games. We watch all 162 games, and it hurts losing your favorite players. But ultimately, just like Edwin, if you don't fault Edwin for leaving because he wants to win, you shouldn't fault Stearns as well for wanting to create a winner when what he has right now isn't a winner. But I'll give the floor to you.
Well, I think they both can be true. I think Edwin, seeing that this isn't an established organization, uh, is grounds for him wanting to leave for an established organization. But we have to start somewhere, right? And I know that Stearns is trying to start somewhere. Obviously, he came in, things were already built, and you don't want to build something on shaky ground because it'll all just come in tumbling down on you. And unless you're ready to just bring the sledgehammer and tear it all down yourself, which Stearns is obviously doing, then you're just going to keep on building on that shaky ground. And so I think he's trying to get to the foundation of this club, trying to figure out what's going on, um, and build it in a team that makes sense for himself. The only problem that I have with that is that this isn't like any organization that he's run in the past, and it feels like he's running it the same way, where he's trying to play Moneyball, where he's trying to be strategic, a little strategic with his money, and to me, the only this was my only problem because I could get, but we were all getting behind all the signings that he made and the starting pitcher signings that he made last year. I was just willing to get uncomfortable for Pete Alonso, and he wasn't, and that's what upset me. Everything else I've been okay with. I've gotten behind. We liked the Frankie Montas. I like the Frankie Montas signing. I thought that was going to be a good experiment. Obviously, that didn't pay off. Griffin Canning paid off a lot more than I thought it would. Didn't like that one, but it paid off. Clay Holmes has paid off a little bit. He hasn't, but all these moves to me have been mediocre. He hasn't made a big move, and we can't even sit here and say that this Juan Soto move was his because we know that was a lot of Steve Cohen influence in that move. And
I
so
don't agree with that.
to me, he hasn't made the big splash yet. And even if you want to include the Juan Soto move in there, you can't just make one. I mean, look at the Dodgers, look at the Yankees, look at the Blue Jays. They don't just make one move and sit idly by. You have to make two or three of these big moves in the offseason to after a season like we just had, especially. Um, you have to make a big splash if you're gonna be a contender year after year.
No, and you're right about that. But here's the thing: who are we trying to contend with? Are we trying to contend with the Dodgers and the Braves and the Phillies, or are we trying to contend with the second tier? And everybody wants to give Stearns this um, that he's not a big time GM because he came from Milwaukee and started with Houston. Nobody can you can't be judged by where you come from. You got to be judged with what you do. And he's only been here 2 years. The fact that we're judging him on a couple this first year, he didn't want to do anything because he's checking it out, right? His second year, he saw what he had, and if we all want to be honest with ourselves, he didn't want to sign Pete last year. He wanted some other team to sign him. And you know what happened? Nobody wanted Pete last year, and so he fell in our lap, and so he signed him. So this whole thing is a year late because he wanted to do this last year, but nobody wanted Pete last year. Um, you know, he Pete quote unquote had a bounce back year, but honestly, they didn't look too much different. The difference was that he had um, Soto in front of him. That was the difference. And when you have a guy like Soto in front of you, you you produce more, or you should produce more, and he did. And so, more power to him, and he got his bag, and that's okay. But to say that Stearns doesn't want to uh, be part of big market is ludicrous to me. And then we can't give um, Cohen the credit when it comes to big moves, and then not give Stearns or give Stearns the blame when it's bad moves, right? So the vision that Juan Soto was so, and let's get to the Juan Soto. We'll get to the Polanco, but we'll talk about Juan Soto speaking today. Um, and you don't sign a guy like Juan Soto because he wants to win. He's not just in it for the money. He's getting the money because he's the best player. But today he was in a press conference in I believe the Dominican Republic, and he goes on to say that he knows he's in communication with Stearns. He knows the vision. He understands what's going on. So he was sold this vision by Stearns. So the reason he signed with us is because Stearns sold him the vision. Plain and simple.
I mean, I can I know that Stearns, um, and I don't know how much you can say that Stearns sold him the vision because Steve Cohen was in every one of those meetings, and we can see how much ownership was involved in that negotiation. Um, but at the end of the day, they wanted this player. They went out and got him. I think really what this press conference says is how involved really is Juan Soto in the makeup of this team. Obviously, they signed him for a long time, and they want to keep him satisfied. Like you said, he wants to win. The question for me is how does Stearns think about winning? What are the moves that he makes to prove that he's a winning front office guy? that he's making these moves to put a winning team out there. But to me, the real teller from this press conference that he did was that this is the guy that is involved in the team. He's obviously involved in a lot of these decisions, whether he's making them or not. I don't think that's the case. Um, I think he's just involved a lot heavily, and that could be sometimes a little shaky when he's so involved that you see that you're kind of trying to uh, appease and trying to make things work and flow in his way. And I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think that they're trying to do that. But I think that's where it could get dangerous, where he's too involved in some of these dealings that he knows a little too much. And there's nothing wrong with knowing a lot about your team. But when you have a player that can be polarizing because he makes so much money and because he's a good baseball player, then you put yourself in a tricky situation. And so I think that you have two options here. You either make Juan Soto the captain of the team because you think that he's going to stay here that long, and he's the guy that you're going to, or you just build the team. Obviously, you tell him about what's going on, but he doesn't have to be in the process. He doesn't have to see how the sausage is made. He needs to just trust the process. And for me, hearing what he had to say during these press conferences, it was like he was involved in these decisions as well. I don't know if that's the case, but what do you think?
No, no, going back to what you said, I might answer your question in a second. Going back to what you said, a player like Juan, if he is that disinvolved, as we're alluding to, wants to know where we're going, and the only guy that can give him that is Stearns, not Cohen. You know, there's a reason why Cohen hired Stearns, and he hired him to take us in a direction that, because Cohen's not a baseball guy. He's a finance guy. He's a Mets fan, but he's not a baseball guy. So, where we can go, Cohen has no idea. Only Stearns can do that. And I do believe that Soto was sold on the vision last year. I do believe that he was sold that Alonso was going to leave last year. Alonso fell in our lap last year because nobody wanted him. So I do believe that he was expecting Alonso not to be back last year, but it didn't happen that way. And because the fact that he knew about Alonso leaving before we did means that he already knew what was going on. And you know, as far as Stearns talking to his players, I also think he talks to Lindor. So it's not just Juan Soto. I think he talks to Lindor as well because these are your top guys on the team. And we're not in the 1980s, so we can't talk about that '86 Mets team because that team, the general manager doesn't talk to, right? But we're in 2026, and players have a different relationship with front office. They actually want to know what's going on. If you're a winning player, you want to know what's going on because you want to see what's coming, and you want to see the mix of your team. Not that he's making the final decision, because I don't believe that Soto's in the final decision, but he wants to be involved on the direction of where we're going and wants to know probably the guys that we're going after. And Stearns wants to hear the opinion from both Lindor and Soto on how they feel about certain players. Not because they're going to sway Stearns in any case, but maybe if Stearns is on the fence on a guy, they could either tip it in either direction when they talk to a guy to Stearns about this certain player. So I don't think he's there making the decisions because that's not how it works. But in 2026, I do believe that the players talk more to their front office than they did years ago.
Yeah, and that could be the case. I think that it's good that they know the vision, but like I feel that if you know the vision, then you just got to trust the process. You'll know the decisions when they come. Obviously, they want to know the decisions before. They don't want to find out about social media, but like, hey, we're signing this guy, and to me, it sounds like he's more involved than even that. But who knows? My point in saying all this is that um, if there really is a an issue in the clubhouse, and one of these guys is casting the vision, and all these guys are coming, they're signing. There's got to be some sort of established leadership within the team, so that when these decisions do come, one of these guys can be that face standing at the clubhouse or standing at the front door saying welcome and casting that vision out for the rest of the team. Um, and maybe that's both of them. Maybe both of them are that kind of guy. But as we're starting to see all these dominoes start to fall, with Pete Alonso leaving, with Brandon Nimmo and Edwin Diaz all leaving, and everyone else, almost all our free agents are gone. Tyler Rogers, Cedric Mullins, all these guys are almost gone. And I think that um, part of the reason, and I was talking to a friend the other day, part of the reason that this clubhouse is in such disarray is because there's not that real leadership in the clubhouse. And so either you got to make Francisco Lindor the captain this year, or you got to make Juan Soto the captain, so that there's an established guy that people go to and say, all right, this is the leader of our team. On and off the field, he works hard, but he's also the guy that casts the vision for the team. I think every team needs a guy like that. We look at all the teams around the league, and all the good ones have a guy that casts a vision like that, a leader on their team. And to me, that's what's missing on the Mets. And if Juan Soto is as involved as we're hearing, and you said Francisco Lindor too. One of those guys needs to be a captain so that they can cast out that vision to everybody that comes through.
I think as fans, we tend to over inflate that whole captain thing. Out of all the 30 teams in MLB last year, I believe there was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. Shout out to Alec in the chat, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. But there were three captains in all of MLB last year, and one of them got traded to the Mets and Marcus Simeon. And so I think the other two are Judge with the Yankees and Perez with the Royals. Other than that, every team, most teams, or 27 teams, don't have captains. And I think that's a thing that's done by the fans, by the media, because we all know who the leaders are in every team, right? For the Mets, it's Lindor, Soto. Probably last year you would have included Nimmo and Pete, and because you had Brett Beatty talk at the QBC yesterday, talking about Lindor's leadership. So I think again, this whole thing, I've kind of shifted my mind of this whole clubhouse thing rift. I think this is more a media driven thing than anything else because we lost. We were a bad team. And what happens to bad teams? We talk about what's wrong. We always, we had the same guys the year before in the magical run of 2024. We didn't hear about these problems, right? The only different guy that we had last year was Juan Soto. Everybody else was basically the same. And all of a sudden we hear about the problems again because we were a bad team. And I think it's overblown. And this whole captain thing is overblown as well because us as fans want to see the C on the guy's chest, and I'm one of them. I did it last year. I sent you some tweets and some other stuff about Captain being a Lindor being a captain, but I don't think there's going to be a captain for the Mets. I think those guys are already showing the vision. Lindor's leading because Brett Beatty looks up to Lindor, and you're going to have guys look up to Soto. That's just the way it is. There's 26 guys in that clubhouse. Not everybody's going to get along. Not everybody's going to like each other. Um, because there's a lot of guys. And that's just a workplace environment. And so I think it's just overblown because we want it to happen, but I don't see us making anybody a captain at this point.
I just feel like that's the wrong mentality to have in terms of people are just going to get not get along, because we want guys to feel as one unit, all marching towards the beat of the same drum. We don't want them to be on different pages. But let me ask you a question: in 2022 and 2024, um, what was the difference in those years in between 2023 and 2025? To me, I think the main difference was that there was established leadership on those teams. In 2022, we had the leadership of the pitching staff with Verlander and Scherzer leading the way, and obviously those guys fell apart. And when they fell apart, the rest of the team fell apart at the end of the season. And then in 2024, who was leading the way? In the for in that playoff run. Obviously, everybody contributed, but Lindor was that stern leader in that clubhouse and on and off the field to get guys going. Obviously, there were guys that stepped up into leadership roles here and there, but those guys were the guys that you looked up to say like these are our leaders. They're what drives us. And I think what fell apart in both 23 and 25 is that we didn't have guys like that. And now I'm not saying that this needs to be because sure, I can agree with you. That captain, that C on the chest might be overrated. We might not need a C on our chest to establish leadership, but something needs to be established in leadership. When asked last year, who was the leader of the team, Juan Soto said Marte. Who of us are going to say that Marte is the leader of the team in years past? Um, I think we just need, and it doesn't even. I think with an organization that's trying to be built from the ground up, you need somebody to lead the team because when you have teams that have experienced managers like the Dodgers, like the Braves, like even the Yankees, you could say. You don't need that leader on the field per se because they're getting it from their manager, from their coaching staff. But we have a young manager and we have a young team or a youngish team with no established leader. Um, I just think that that's the driving point to our success in this 2026 season. Um, I'm beating a dead horse here. I can go on about my opinion about leadership and stuff. At the end of the day, we'll see what happens with the moves that are made and how the clubhouse is constructed because we have young guys that are rising up to leadership, like Francisco Alvarez eventually. Um, but I just think that's my opinion in getting the clubhouse going and
Well,
getting this team going in the right direction.
yeah, but the problem is that there's a couple holes in your argument. First of all, if you really want to look at the 24 season and 25 season and say Lindor was the leader in the 24 season, then where was he in the 25 season? Because he was still
Well,
here.
Soto came. He put a wrench in all that.
No, he's one player. He's not going to put a wrench. He's only one player, and two, this is why this whole thing is overblown in your part because one player is not going to do that, especially not the best player in the league or one of the best players in the league. Sorry, and two, in my opinion, the guy that got the ball rolling in 2024 was actually a guy that wasn't going to be here more than 1 year, and that was JD Martinez. And so And I think that's why there's so many. That's why this whole thing about captainship is overblown. Is because leadership comes in different ways, and yes, we all want guys going in one direction, and and the reason you sign these guys is because they're all going in one direction. And that's towards the World Series, and they all want to win the World Series. Just because they may or may not, again, I think it's overblown by the media. I think they're fine, but are they best friends? No. Are they going to be going out to dinner a lot? Probably not. But they both have one goal. They want to win. So if we go back to 1986, two of our best players oh, went to fist at each other. Keith Hernandez and Gary Carter. So so I just think that whole thing is overblown. And I've been one to fall into that because it's good to see. You love seeing the captain. You want to call somebody the captain, just like we call David Wright our captain. You just want to do that as fans. But I think it's just an overblown thing on our end because of the way the locker room is and how many guys are coming together all at once. And in the pitching staff, as far as leadership in 2022, they're great leaders, but they're not going to lead hitters. Pitchers don't lead hitters. That's not how it works. And so hitters lead hitters, and pitchers lead pitchers. That's how the clubhouse is run. And so, as far as the pitching staff being the leadership in 2022, that doesn't lead our hitters. It's still going to come from a Nimmo. It's still going to come from a Lindor. It's still going to come from a Pete. And when it comes to the hitters, and so if you can see when you're hitting, even last year, people went to Soto, people went to Pete, people went to Lindor, and people went to Nimmo. That's and that's where you see the leadership, right? And so, but you're right. We can go around in circles, guys. If you have your opinions, we would love to hear and put them in the comments and let us know what you're thinking about the leadership. But this is a brand new thing. And going back to that interview with Soto, if he's in communications with management, with Stearns, that also means that what Edwin said about lack of communication, or what the media says about lack of communication, isn't there. It's obvious when it comes from the mouth of your superstar that he communicates with with Stearns, that there is no lack of communication. So I hope that narrative dies now that we hear that from Soto.
Well, I don't know if one person can kill that narrative when so many others have kind of talked about not seeing the direction, but um, or just being miscommunicated on the direction of the team. We've seen this with other guys in the past. We don't really. There's a At the end of the day, I think um, we can just say that there's something wrong in New York. That so far, what's been going on in New York has not been working. That something needs to change, and it's David Stern and Carlos Mendoza's job to do that. We can put all the pressure on Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor to um, create this culture, but at the end of the day, their jobs are to perform. Their jobs are to play baseball, and so um, it's David Stearns. The ball is in his court. He has to go out, create a team that will be coercive, that gets the vision of winning and sustained winning, like he's talked about since he's been here. And it's Mendoza's job during the season to get that vision throughout every one of those players, throughout his whole staff, and to make sure that we are all going in the same direction. That's why we hire managers. I know that it's a big coaching job, or it's not. It's seen as a big coaching job, but at the end of the day, it's to get these players' minds right and hearts in the same direction. And so, um, I just hope that this isn't the end for David Stearns in this offseason. There's a lot more to do. At the end of the day, we've seen superstars brawl it out, like you said, even in the modern era, and compete and play. And as long as they're putting up the numbers, obviously Lindor didn't have a great season last year, but as long as they're performing to a level and staying positive, um, then that's all that matters. It's Carlos Mendoza's job to keep the clubhouse intact at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's finish up the pod here really quick with Jorge Polanco. 20 million is steep for this player, but a lot of people were projecting him to get 3 years, uh, 45. Obviously, this goes again with the narrative that Stearns doesn't want to go past 3 years. And in this case, he's only going 2 years with a guy that is a switch hitter and hits lefties well and doesn't strike out a lot. So if me and you talked earlier in the offseason that we need guys that don't strike out. We need guys to kind of have that the Blue Jays mentality and not strike out and put the ball in play. Well, Jorge Polanco is one of those guys. Where he's going to play, I'm not sure. Everybody's talking about first base and DH. For the Mariners, he DH'd 88 games last year, so he spent most of his time as a DH. So I think that's where he's going to be for the Mets, which means that Mark Vientos' time is coming to an end, I believe, and I'm not sure when that is because we can get into what we think was going to happen, but we have no idea at this point. But how do you feel about Jorge Polanco?
I think that's where most of my frustration comes from is the signing of Jorge Polanco. Honestly, I was sitting at a serving event and with my church, and I got the news, and I was like, I'm gonna throw my phone because to me this was like the Pete Alonso replacement, and this is the reason I think that because I don't think anyone is wants this to be the Pete Alonso replacement, but at the end of the day, we haven't heard from David Stearns, but um, we lost Edwin Diaz, even though we wanted to keep him. And to me, it's saying, it's putting a hard line in the sand. Stearns is saying, I'm not going past 2 or 3 years. I'm going to sign these guys. And if I don't get what I want, then okay, we're going to settle. And we're going to see what we can do on the trade market with these reclamation projects, with these young guys coming up. But I'm going to sign this guy, and he's going to be a good backup for me. And who knows if that's what's going on in the mind of Stearns. But that's what happened with Edwin Diaz in this Devin Williams signing, and because we don't hear anything about him going after another closer after after Edwin Diaz got signed, and so I'm just curious as to what's next. Like everyone else, if this is it, then I'm gonna be pissed. I'm
No,
gonna
this
be
is
upset.
this is not it, and we have to stop thinking in the Pete Alonso replacement because nobody's going to replace Pete. Pete's a power bat, big time power bat. I'm not going to deny that from Pete. Pete is a big time power bat, and you don't replace him with one player. Just like the Yankees couldn't replace Soto with just one player, they had to get multiple players to replace him. And here's the thing: if we believe that, or if we want, let me rephrase that, if we want to be more like a Blue Jays team that was very exciting to watch in the World Series because they did not strike out a lot. So if we want that, we want to get more guys like that in our lineup, and this is a start. I'm not saying this is the end, but this is a start. We can't think of Pete Alonso replacement because nobody is going to one on one. Nobody's going to be able to replace Pete. The only guy in this offseason that was able to replace Pete one on one was Kyle Schwarber. That was it. Nobody else can replace Pete. So I think we have to, if we're going to think that we're getting the Pete Alonso replacement, then I understand your frustration because you're going to be frustrated because we can't replace Pete. You know what I mean?
Well, let me ask you a question. If we don't get if we can't sign a guy or no one is moving off the um or sorry Let me rephrase. Start over. Does David Stearns sign a guy for more than 2 or 3 years this year?
I don't think so. Just
Then
because these guys are older and they're, and here's the thing. Again, the narrative that he doesn't want to sign guys for longer contracts. He offered Yamamoto a long-term contract. He just wanted to play for the Dodgers. That was it. So it's not like, and we got Juan Soto on a 15-year contract. So it's not about um, not wanting to give out long-term contracts. I know everybody wants to use the Friedman quote that if you are conservative and I'm paraphrasing, if you're conservative on on going after free agents, then you'll always be in third place or something like that. And yes, he can say that now. That's not how he started off with. We got to stop also comparing ourselves because we're not there yet. This has proven 2025 and 2023 and even 2022, even though we made the playoffs, you know, 2024 is an anomaly. We can't consider 2024, and even though we didn't have a good team. We went on a run. But 2025, 2023, and to an extent 2022, they were bad teams. We have to admit it. We have to get to the point where they were bad teams. And in 2022, Stearns was not here. He did not, sign a lot of those players.
2023 we were bad. 2022 we were not bad. 2024 you could say that there was a little bit of magic there, sure. But my point in asking you that is to say, if we're not going to sign a guy for more than 2 or 3 years this year, then there was no point in signing Jorge Polanco, because to me, there's not a guy out there that is on a 2 or 3 year deal that's going to be worth adding to this roster. That's going to say, okay, now we've got 2 or 3 bats that are going to be um, to match the production that Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo had last year. And not only that, if we're signing this guy and we don't make another move and we're staying internal, then like I said, why sign him? What are we gonna do with Mark Vientos? What are we gonna do with Ronnie Mauricio next year? What are we gonna do with Luis Angel? And I'll sit here and I'll take the L if those guys get traded for a great piece in the off season. But if these guys are on our organization next year, then why are we signing Jorge Polanco?
But again, there lies the rub here. One, the offseason isn't over, right? We're acting like this is our team right now, and the offseason isn't over. Most players haven't signed or moved. We're still talking about Terrence Kubo being traded, and Jorge Polanco kind of indicates that not only McNeil's going to be traded, but also Vientos is going to be traded. So um, the Jorge Polanco tells you that we're not done yet. And if you listen to David Stearns in the winter meetings, he talked about trades more than anything else. So I think that's the part that we need to be patient for. Is one, off season hasn't ended yet. Most players haven't signed yet, right? None of the Japanese players have signed yet, and you know, and no trades really have happened yet. Small trade with Kansas City and Cincinnati, I think, or Milwaukee, just a couple days ago, but nothing has really actually moved. And the reason that we're getting up in arms is because all these moves are happening little by little by little, and we're acting like it's the end on every move. And I think that's where we have to kind of pump the brakes and let things slide. For example, Murakami, he's up next Monday, so I assume him signing sometime this week. I don't think they're going to drag it out till next Monday. He's either going to sign with the team or he's going to go back to Japan, and we're going to hear about that this week. And so that's going to move the Japanese market, right? Because Akamoto's not going to sign until Murakami signs. And Akamoto's deadline is in January, January 2nd or January 4th, one of the two. So I think that's why we have to. Um, oh, and if there is a signing, I just said his name. It's going to be Akamoto to play first base, and so that's the thing that we need to kind of pump the brakes and see what's the next move. And you know what's frustrating? The frustrating thing is, as we do this video, is that we can't tell you what we're doing because we don't know what the Mets are doing because Stearns doesn't talk. He doesn't let us know what he's doing. Who had Jorge Polanco? Who had Simeon Nimmo trade? Who had the Devin Williams signing? Nobody did. We didn't hear about it until it actually happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying. I just don't agree with the sentiment that um, a move is going to be made. Just I don't know if I have faith that we're going to be able to get something done. And we can sit here and hypothesize over this move or that move. Obviously, we all want McNeil gone, and at this point, seems like we're all on the side of um, dumping Mark Vientos and maybe even Ryan Mauricio too. But even if we go out and get somebody on the trade market, uh, uh, I just I can't see it all working out at the end of the day.
Well, let me ask you this.
And
Uh,
and and on top of that, these other free agents, these Japanese guys, I don't think we're the lead team on to sign these guys, and so I am just failing to find the optimism in the situation that we're in.
well, but again, let me ask you this because as far as first basemen are concerned, and both Akamoto and Murakami are basically first basemen. The only teams that need a first baseman are the Mets and Boston. But the question is, we have a lot of um, infielders right now with the signing of Polanco. We have Acuna, we have Vientos, we have Simeon, we have Lindor, Beatty. Um, and am I missing anybody else?
No,
No.
wait,
And
were you talking about?
our infield, right? We got Vientos, all guys that can't be sent down, right? These are guys without options. So I'm gonna leave Mauricio out of this. But we got Vientos, we got Acuna, McNeil, Simeon, Lindor, Beatty, and Polanco. That's seven guys in the infield. How can you not believe that there's not a trade coming?
I'll believe it when I see it. Who is the best candidate for with the Mets? That's my question.
We don't
Um,
know.
that's what I'm saying. Like I don't know. I can't predict it because I don't see it happen. I don't see one out there that
Well,
makes
I
sense.
but see, here's the thing. I can predict a trade because we have seven guys in the infield right now. I just don't know who's that going to be. I can tell you who I want, but I can't tell you who it's going to be because Stearns doesn't talk. And none of the things that have happened we heard until they happened. That those are facts. We didn't hear about it until they actually happened.
Yeah, no, I mean that's true. But what trade have you liked that David Stearns has made so far?
Well, he's only made really one trade that matters, and that's the Nimmo Simeon trade. And if that trade um, gives us a little bit of flexibility down the road, I'm okay with. Because you had to make room for Carson
The
Bench in the outfield, and so that's what this trade made. This made room for Carson Bench in the outfield.
the only one to me that made sense, and that's paid off really. It didn't make sense at the time because it was for Adrian Hauser, but the Tyrone Taylor trade ended up being a lot better than because we got Tyrone Taylor, not Adrian Hauser, and I think you nailed it on the head on that last point, we have these young guys coming up that are exciting, and I think if we've learned anything from David Stern's career is that he likes these young guys. He likes giving them opportunities, and so if that's what we're banking on, if we're banking on these guys, and David Stearns just has an eye for these guys to be good in the 20 and to be factors in the 2026 season, then you know we'll just sit here and be like, okay, sure, yeah, these guys were backup plans. Jorge Polanco is a backup plan for Mark Vientos failing, and Ryan Clifford coming up. Marcus Simeon was a backup plan for Jet Williams, and if we make another move in the outfield for a guy that is on a shorter term deal that is just an average bat, then that guy's a backup plan for Carson Bench, and so maybe that's the David Stearns mentality. I can't sit here and speculate. I know that he likes these guys, but we know that he also gives them he likes to give them young guys opportunities. I'd love to see him make a winning team to put out there next year. To me, we're wasting valuable years from Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto, um, but there might be a method to the madness, like you said.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I don't think this is a rebuild. This is a retool. We're going to be very competitive this year. How many wins that's yet to be seen. But I don't think we're rebuilding. Rebuilding means that we're going to be a under 500 team, and I don't believe that's going to be the case. But guys, we've kind of talked a lot in this video, kind of exhausted the topic of where Stearns is going. You know, let us know how you're feeling. I know half of y'all feel like Victor and don't see where it's happening. Half of y'all have the optimism that you still trust Stearns. But let us know in the comments. Let us know how you feel. Tell us what you think is happening. Tell us what you think of what we talked about today, and let us know how you feel. But before we get out of here, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and Victor, any last words?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll save this. I've had my Pete sentiment, but listen, I'm a Pete Alonso fan. I'm uh, I'm gonna miss you, Pete. You were one of my favorite players. You created a special moment for me in that 2024 season, and I love watching you grow up in the organization. And so it's sad to see you leave. I'm going to be rooting for you out in Baltimore, especially playing against those Yankees. But yeah, you got a special place in my heart. And so rooting for you, but at the end of the day, rooting for the Mets. Let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.